Hi, everyone. We'll wait for a few minutes. I never kind of like the silence in waiting for the Zoom. So when we used to do this when it was distance learning, I would always play music for the kids. So um I'll play some music, and I would always see if they knew what music I was playing. We'd make a little game of it. We got some incorrect guesses so far. Some of you did get that. That was Take on Me by a-ha. Getting some messaging about yeah, people were close. Yes. Okay, there's Mr. Wennerberg. There we are. Okay, well, welcome everybody to 10th to 11th grade registration. My name is Heidi Cosgrove, and I am the 10th grade counselor, and I'm going to have, I believe, Mr. Wennerberg welcome you to the registration. And as he's doing that, I'm going to get the screen share going.
Thank you, Ms. Cosgrove. like Ms. Cosgrove said, I'm Derek Winterberg, 10th grade assistant principal here at St. Louis Park High School, and just welcome everyone tonight to exciting time. Registration is an exciting time, and as you are 10th graders this year, going into your 11th grade year is a big year. It is the kind of your halfway point to high school, but is also a big year of looking to the second half of your high school year of choices for classes, looking at where you are in standing for credits and going into your junior and senior year as far as your pathways, as far as where you are for getting a certain class and coursework done, and as where you are as far as what you want to do for choices going into just different areas of just the coursework, and kind of looking towards that next step, because it's a big step. You have 2 years left of your high school experience, and it's really that time of year where you start thinking of what's coming up next in your kind of in your life, and where am I at in my high school career, and looking at what classes do I need to set myself up for that next step. So tonight is that night that you are going to get all the information that you could ever imagine to help set you up for having that successful time in that junior year, and then also set you up for your senior year to making sure that you are in that place. So we're going to give you, Ms. Cosgrove is going to give you a lot of information tonight to get you and inform you and to get you into that best spot. Tonight is just very information overload. So if you have any questions, anything that's specific to you, please make sure that you are writing those down, holding those in that space. Tonight is not necessarily meant for really a question and answer in this format, but we also want to save space for you to ask questions to Ms. Cosgrove, and we'll give you an opportunity to how to do that. So if you do have specific questions, there will be an outlet for you to do that, but make sure that you are keeping those questions written down somewhere so you don't lose them, because we want to be able to offer you space to do that, whether it's emailing Ms. Cosgrove, myself, Principal Paddock, or whatever. But we're hoping to give you enough information where a lot of those questions will be answered tonight. So without any other further delay, because there's a lot of information out there, I turn it over back to Ms. Cosgrove. So welcome everyone, and I appreciate all of you being here tonight.
Great, thank you, Mr. Winterberg. Yeah, so we do have the chat. So if you do have any questions, just so I don't forget to mention this, we are creating a live frequently asked questions FAQ, and we would love to take any questions that you have to help populate that document that we'll have live in a couple days. So because I think there's great questions that are coming out. I just presented for 11th to 12th grade, and we took a lot of their questions, and they're great questions. So we're going to use them to make sure that everybody has access to see those questions and responses. So then at the end, if you want to stay on and we can help address anything that we have. But yes, I will have a lot of information coming at you. I love boxes. I love colorful boxes. So we're going to get going. I just want families to know the registration timeline of what their students are going through right now. Last week in their social studies classes, there was an elective fair. And so all of the different electives in the building kind of went around to talk to your students about all the different options of classes that are out there for next year. And so that was done all last week. So hopefully your students might have come home and said, boy, this one sounds interesting, or that one. And so that was a really fun time. The next 2 weeks, we are going to be in classrooms presenting to students. So Ms. Nelson and I are, Ms. Nelson was a 9th grade counselor last year. We are going to be in, I'm going to be in 10th grade classes and 11th grade classes. And we're going to be at the middle school. So that's for the next 2 weeks that we're going to be in classrooms. And so I'll see your students in the next 2 weeks. And then the last week in February, we want to make sure we have time and space for you or your students to come by and ask any questions that you might have, any help that you might need. And we'll just have full day drop-in times that we'll post on Schoology, and we really welcome the questions to come in that last week in February once we're done being in classrooms for the next 2 weeks. What I'm going to present to your students over the next couple of weeks, I always like to start with GPA and graduation requirements, because over the years, students have told me that's what is on their mind right now, is trying to understand that and making sure they have a good handle on that. So for students to find their GPA and credits, it's right in their PowerSchool under grades and attendance. And it lists their cumulative GPA, which includes all of their semesters that are completed. It does not include anything that's in progress. So this semester that they're doing right now is not included in that cumulative GPA. And next to that, it also lists their cumulative credit hours or credits that they have. So they can see that right there. And again, that is completed classes. That is nothing that's in progress right now for semester 2. Students often want to understand the breakdown of their GPA number and exactly what that means. So I like to show them this so that they can understand if they have a 2.8 GPA, they're sitting right between a B and a B minus, or if they have a 2.2 GPA, they're between a C or C plus. If they have a 3.5 GPA, they're kind of right in that middle between an A minus and B plus. So just so that they can understand that breakdown. And a GPA does include all letter grades throughout high school. It does not include the pass grades or the NC grade that we used when we were deeper in the pandemic times of the letter grades. So one thing I just wanted to share that the students saw in their connections classes throughout first semester is just the pass-fail reminder. So it's new for this year, so it's going to feel different than the last few years. So essentially, students are able to take a pass in elective classes only. And they have to determine that with their teacher within the first 6 weeks of the class. So that's something new that happened this year, that the students, and it was in the parent-student handbook, and that was discussed with them at during their Park Connections early in the fall. A lot of times I get questions about, Ms. Cosgrove, what will my GPA be if I get these letter grades this semester? What will it be? And I'm honest, I'm not a math person in terms of how to be able to calculate that, but we're kind of in that era that there is an app for everything, a website for everything. And there are some really neat high school GPA calculators out there. They're a little time consuming because students got to enter their information. They're not exactly perfect, but they're pretty close to that. And they're certainly helpful if students kind of want to play around with that to see, if I get this or that, how would that change? And then I talk with students about their graduation requirements. The magic number that they must earn is 46 credits. And that's 46 semester credits. So each class that they take each semester is worth 1 credit. So the English 10 that they're in this semester is 1 credit, and last semester it was 1 credit. And study halls do not issue any credits. Now, with that said, I'd like to present 2 interesting fun facts regarding study halls. So fun fact number 1, if a student never, ever, ever takes a study hall during their high school career and pass all their classes, they will actually graduate with 56 credits. That's 10 more than they actually need for graduation. If a student does take 1 study hall every semester of high school, 9th through 12th grade, study hall every semester, and they pass all their classes, they will graduate with 48 credits. So still 2 more credits than they need And that's taking a study hall every semester. So I know sometimes students get a little nervous of that. Is that going to prevent me from graduating? How does that work? And so I know a lot of times that students do have study halls and they got a lot going on and they need that time. And sometimes that's just super helpful for them. Students will often ask when I'm in their classes in the next couple weeks, well, how many credits should I have right now after I just finished 10th grade semester 1? Where should I be? And so I have two scenarios for them of where they should be. And the first example in the blue is if that student did take a study hall every semester so far in 9th grade and then last semester. And so they would have 18.25 credits, and that 0.25 comes from that connection advisory that they had in 9th grade. And the second example in the pink is if a student has never taken a study hall so far, not one. So they would have 21.25 credits. So kind of that perfection place of credits is between 18 and 21 credits. That's where they should be. Now, we will have students that will have a little bit more than that. Perhaps they're in jazz band or park singers, or they did something with the Orioles nest, or perhaps they might be below 18 for a couple of reasons. Perhaps they came from a different school that was not on a 7-period day. Perhaps they did have a couple extra study halls because of some things happening in their life. Or perhaps they didn't pass some classes and so they're running short on credits. And I tell students, if you're below 18, please, please, please don't panic. I want to work with them to work on, okay, how do we work on some credit recovery that's going to start in March? How do we get that going so we can make sure that we keep making progress and a little bit of extra progress? So I never want students to think they're not going to graduate, because I want to work with them if they're in that situation. Now, within those 46 credits, they have to have them in certain areas. And this is kind of a list view, a laundry list of what those areas are. And so, for instance, they can't have like 30 credits of, I don't know, underwater basket weaving to, it has to be in certain areas. So for English, they need to have 8 credits or 4 years. Social studies, they need to have 8 credits or 4 years. Math, they need to have 6 credits or 3 years, and so forth. So that's kind of the laundry list of what the specific academic areas are. We as counselors use that laundry list, and we kind of put it in a visual view. And this is what the laundry list looks like in a visual view of what their English, their social studies. So we go through and check off all of their credits that they've earned to make sure that they are meeting their graduation requirements. I also like a more pathway view for students to understand what each required pathway is for graduation. So for instance, in English, they did their English 9 last year. They're doing English 10 this year. And so next year, we'll talk about at registration their English 11 options for 11th grade. And then they can see down the road what 12th grade will look like for English as well. For the social studies required courses in 9th grade, they did their civics. This year, as a 10th grader, they're doing their world or European history. Next year, they're going to be looking at their US history requirements. And then in 12th grade, which is really fun, they have a lot of options of what to take in 12th grade. So they get super excited for 12th grade social studies because there's just so much to take. And then for science, in 9th grade, they do their regular science or environmental. This year, they're doing their chemistry. Next year, they do their biology. And this one's a tiny bit misleading because it looks like science is required for 12th grade, but they didn't cut that off. So actually, here's this brightly colored requirement viewpoint. So students need 1 year of biology, which is what students will be taking next year as juniors. Then they need 1 year of chemistry or physics, and many students will get their chemistry done this year. And then they need a year of any other science, which is often coming from their 9th grade year. Now, students will sometimes kind of get excited about this because they think, oh, I don't have to take science in 12th grade because I've done all my science requirements. from a graduation perspective, yes, that is true. However, we also want to make sure that students are keeping a rigorous senior year, especially if they're looking at college applications and going on to a 2 or 4 year school. So we do really recommend that students continue with science in that senior year, which is often physics or the second year of the advanced biology course. Keeping with these colorful boxes, I just want to talk about math because this can get a little tricky in terms of understanding the math requirements. The key to meeting math requirements is completing advanced algebra or algebra 2. That's the key. And so there's often 3 options in terms of pathways that students do this. Option 1, they take geometry, often in 9th grade. They're perhaps in advanced algebra right now, and then next year they'll take pre-calc. The other option is students did geometry last year. As a 10th grader right now, they're in intermediate algebra, which is kind of like algebra 1. And then next year as a junior, they would do advanced algebra. Or the green option, which is the advanced option, where students perhaps came in right away in 9th grade in the honors advanced algebra track. The state of Minnesota assumes that if students come in under this realm, that they saw geometry in middle school, and then they're taking the AP or IB options over the next few years to complete their math. The math department has this handy dandy pathway. So to help students and families understand what their next pathway is for math. And so if your student came in 9th grade with geometry, if they're in intermediate algebra right now, they'd go into advanced algebra next year. If they're in advanced algebra right now, they have a couple options of pre-calculus or statway. And what's really key with math to make sure that students are going into the right course is it's super, super important for students and families just to connect with their current math teacher or math teacher from first semester, just to make sure, hey, I believe we're going to be registering for this math course. What do you think? Does that sound good? And then the next pathway is if students came in as 9th graders going into honors geometry, just to show you that the math department has mapped out those pathways into 11th and 12th grade for students and families to see what the options are. And again, as the options become more, again, just crucial to be connecting with the math teacher to say, hey, which one do you think? Where are they at? What would you recommend? And then that advanced pathway that if they're as 9th graders coming in with advanced algebra, again, just to show you that the math department has made recommendations for each year of what that next pathway is. And that's all in the course book on the high school website. For the other requirements of health and Phy-Ed, students need to do a semester of Phy-Ed, which is often done in 9th grade, and then their health, which they're doing this year. And then their Park Connections credit, they get a 0.25 credit every year. And that earns them 1 credit over the 4 years that they're doing that. So that is a requirement. And then art, they need to do 2 art credits. And that can be any 2 semester-long classes or a year-long class. And a year-long class could be like band, choir, orchestra. Those are our year-long classes, or any 2 semester classes. So a student could do pottery and construction, or intro to art and mixed media art. So it can be any 2 classes that they need to do between 9th grade and graduation for their art requirement. They can certainly do more, but they need to make sure and do at least 2. And then what gets a little confusing for students is understanding how many elective requirements they need. So essentially, students need to have 13 semester-long classes, 13 credits for their electives. Now, one thing that's not required for graduation is foreign language. St. Louis Park in the state of Minnesota does not have a foreign language requirement for graduation. So any foreign language that a student does gets counted under electives. And we often encourage students to take at least 2 years of a foreign language, especially if they're looking at 4-year possibilities for schools after graduation. Other electives could be business classes. It could be additional music. So if your student took band in 9th grade, that's meeting their art. And now they're in band this year, now that's getting counted as electives. If they're taking that 4th year of math, because only 3 years are required, that's now an elective. The 4th year of science is an elective. Any additional PE classes, art, English classes like Echo 1, additional social studies, those all get counted as electives. And then also if they want a student aid, they do get credit for that one time. So how it starts to come together is classes start coming into these little spots here. So for instance, this student took Spanish 1, semester 1, and then they took Spanish 1, semester 2, and then they took their 9th grade ICL. And then this is band for 10th grade semester 1, 10th grade semester 2, perhaps they took a photo. So students are actually really surprised by how quickly these electives do fill up before graduation. I always want to make sure, because we get students that come from other schools, that we never forget about you, because perhaps students come from systems that are from a quarter or a block or a trimester. So I just want students to know that we absolutely work with the schools if they're on a different system to make sure that your transcript comes in nicely into St. Louis Park. Whoops. Okay, I just want to touch on some enrichment opportunities here at our high school, and our popular one is PSEO, that stands for Post-Secondary Enrollment Options. And essentially students need to be in good academic standing to do PSEO. We are going to have some student presentations starting to happen next week, starting on Monday the 13th and all the way into March. And then we'll definitely have some more after spring break. And so students just need to select one of these class periods to come and hear about the PSEO presentation. We have that formatted to start from the very beginnings of PSEO to what happens at the very end, like how do you get through the whole process of applying for PSEO. And so I welcome students to come listen to that, even if they're maybe thinking of it for their senior year, just to know kind of what's going to be up and coming. We also started to have PSEO workshops to help students with their applications because some of the applications can be a little tricky, and we want to make sure students are getting support to do those applications. So we have times available for students to come into our office to help with their PSEO application and get all the paperwork that they might need for that. And then we have a parent guardian PSEO information presentation, which is going to be next Wednesday. It's going to be a Zoom from 6:30 to 7:30 that we invite you to come listen to that information. And just to talk about deadlines just real quick, the U of M deadline, April 17th, that kind of comes a little quick. And then the deadline to apply for the fall PSEO is May 30th. So just important to make sure there are deadlines with this. And Laura King, who was my sub for first semester, and so now I'm back. And we just don't want to get rid of Miss King because she's wonderful and awesome. So we were able to take her on as a part-time PSEO coordinator because our PSEO programming is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger in terms of students that want to do that. So we're super happy to keep her, and she is now in that role as helping students with PSEO coordination. To talk about some other enrichment opportunities, we also have advanced placement called AP, and these are all of the AP classes that we do offer at the high school between 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. This is where students are in a year-long course, and then in May, they take a test that all students across the country, world really, take a test to see what score they earn. And then the college that they go to will determine if they want to issue college credit for that course. So that's how AP works. Then there's something called Articulated College Credit, the ACC classes. And this is our list of ACC classes. You'll see that it ranges from business to health to woodworking to CNA, nursing assistant, accounting, art. So these are actually classes that are accredited with area colleges, whether it's Normandale, HTC, Hennepin Tech, so that if students receive an 80% or higher in these courses, their teacher will work with the college to make sure that they are generating a transcript from that college that they can take with them to wherever they decide to go, or if they're going to stay with that college, so that they're earning some college credit. Then we also have something called concurrent enrollment. And these 5 classes are taught on our campus. So they're also college courses taught by one of our high school teachers that are trained in the college delivery of this. And so they successful completion in these courses, they also generate a college transcript. And these classes are predominantly from Normandale College, that students will get a transcript from Normandale in these classes with college credit. And then there's something called work-based learning with Ms. Mueller. And so these are great opportunities if students are interested in apprenticeships like IT, HVAC, any manufacturing and engineering. So some amazing programs to really help students find their pathway. So when they're graduating from high school, they have some really nice pathways to pursue. So it's really important for us to let students and families know that it's not just AP classes for college credit. There's a lot of different options and opportunities for students to kind of think about what sounds good, what am I liking, and that we help them find those opportunities. So we're super excited about these enrichment opportunities. And then, of course, there's International Baccalaureate, which is our IB program. And this is a very prescribed list of courses that students will take. And the IB classes, kind of a similar thought of like AP in terms of that college level coursework. And so if students are interested in looking at being an IB diploma candidates, they would look at this IB diploma program's pathway in grade 10, 11, and 12. And then there's different groups of what they need to choose from. So again, it's already prescribed of what they need to take. And it's looking at taking a certain amount of what's called HL or higher level classes, or SL, which is standard level classes. Both very rigorous, just a little different in terms of what's presented in those, in terms of maybe a little bit of rigor with that. And so if your student or you are interested in learning more about the IB diploma, our enrichment coordinator, Faduma Adid, is great and can absolutely help walk you through what would be a good IB pathway for that. And again, it's already a very prescribed list of courses that your student would have for junior year and senior year. So there's very the coursework is pretty much going to be set right there, and set for junior and senior year for them. And that's Faduma Adid, our enrichment coordinator. Okay, so when I'm working with your students in classes, they're going to have a registration planner sheet. And it's going to walk them through step by step of what they need to register for, obviously being very, very mindful of their graduation requirements. So they're going to get this sheet, which is front and back, to help walk them through. Whoops. And when we see them in their classes, we're going to actually have them go on to PowerSchool. and start inputting their classes. So they'll go into their English, their social studies, and they'll start selecting their courses, and they can save their work and continue with it. And I'll talk a little bit about that in just a moment. A lot of times what students get stuck on is when they look at this registration sheet, they look and they go, well, how many am I supposed to choose? Like, what should I be doing? And, you know, I'm not sure. So this registration sheet, I know it's super hard to see, but they all have little boxes by them. So if it's a full year class, they have 2 little boxes for semester 1 and semester 2. If it's just a semester long class, it's 1 little box. So they'll see these little boxes coming at them. And so what I tell them is, if they have 14 classes or boxes selected, that gives them 0 study halls. If they have 13 classes or boxes selected, that gives them 1 study hall for the year. And if they have 12 boxes selected, that gives them 2 study halls for the year, ideally a study hall each semester. And I have a little caution there because the ideal scenario is a study hall each semester, but it can happen where perhaps some of their classes are only offered in semester 2. Their electives that they want to take are only offered in semester 2. So now they have 7 classes falling into semester 2 and 5 in semester 1. So now they're stuck kind of having to scramble to find another class. So I do say 12 classes with some caution. Ideally, I would love sophomores to register for 13 just to kind of make sure everything gets filled. And then if we need to release a class for a study hall the first couple weeks, we can certainly do that. The registration site on PowerSchool will keep track at the very bottom of how many they've requested. So that'll add them up for them. And there will also be a little submit button down here that they'll click, and they can reopen it to make any adjustments, especially if they're talking with family, with teachers, things like that. They can reopen it and it'll stay open for any adjustments through Thursday, March 3rd at 11:59 p.m. And then it shuts down, it closes. So they do have some time to be thinking about things as well, but they will be starting it the next couple weeks. So we'll walk them through each section of the registration sheet. And for their junior year English, they can take a full year of regular English, or they can start entering the IB English classes, which are a 2-year program. And there's IB English Language and Literature SL, which stands for standard level, or IB English Literature HL, which stands for higher level. So the difference between the two, IB English Literature is going to feel a little bit more traditional in terms of doing a lot of literature reading, books, discussion on that. So a lot of times if students are in honors English, kind of a lot of that literature they're doing, it's going to feel the same with the literature HL. Now the IB English SL, it's not that it's easier than HL, it's just different. So they study language and literature. So they add the language part in there. So they do the literature, but not as much. And so the language, they're going to be studying the English language. And so not just through literature books, but perhaps through magazines, newspaper, articles, TV shows, media, and discussing how the language is incorporated into that. So they kind of take another look at it through a different lens with that. So again, not that it's easier, it's just different. English 11 is also very good. That is where they're going to, they're going to be doing literature in there. And they're also going to be focusing on writing components as well. All 3 are a very good course. What students cannot do is mix and match. So for instance, they cannot do a semester of English 11 and then second semester IB English. It's all one course. So they got to select either a full year of English 11, a full year of IB English Language and Literature, or a full year of IB English Literature. And what I really encourage students to do, especially if they're wondering which one, please, please, please have them connect with their English teacher just to see what they think would be a good fit. Social studies for junior year is US history. And so students can take regular US history. They can take advanced placement US history, or they can take IB history, authoritarian states. And I can see there's a boo-boo on there right now. It's the IB history authoritarian states that is offered next year. So the difference between these history classes. So US history, regular US history is going to have a very linear timeline of covering US history. There's going to be readings and discussions and projects and tests, very traditional US history. The AP US history is going to be a college level course, college level textbook. It's going to feel very, what students have said, traditional in terms of some lecture and some notes and discussions and then tests. And so it's a very college-y feel course. And the IB history, history of authoritarian states, for, again, a college feel, but there's going to be still a lot of reading, a lot of notes, but also they're not going to cover as much US history material that AP US history will cover. But they're going to cover and dive into some of that material. So they're not going to have the time to cover a whole bunch, but they're going to, what they do cover, they're going to go in depth of that. Whereas AP US history is going to cover a lengthy timeline, but they're not going to go in depth of that. So that's the difference between AP and IB. And US history, regular US history will also cover the lengthy timeline as well. So that's the choices for social studies. Same rules apply in terms of English. You can't mix and match. So you can't do US history first semester and IB history second semester. It's kind of choose your year of what you're going to do. Math, similar to those math pathways that I showed you. Again, especially going into junior year math, just making sure checking in with that math teacher, saying it sounds like my student should be registering for advanced algebra. What do you think? Does that sound good? One small note that's going to be a change for next year is pre-calculus. It's now going to be labeled AP pre-calculus. And it's not going to be this massive change in curriculum by any means, but it's going to have opportunity for AP testing. So that's why they had to name it AP pre-calc. So it's our regular pre-calc that we have right now. But the AP is just going in front of it. And again, just a reminder of how the 3 years of math work. Again, sometimes students get super excited of, I don't have to take math in senior year. And as long as they do their 3 years, yes, they are correct. However, I really, really recommend that if students can hang on for math until senior year, as we start getting to that they definitely do that for math and also for science. For junior year science, their selection for probably 95% of students is going to be biology. And that is where there is a year-long biology course, or the IB Biology HL, which is a 2-year program. So they can, they start that in junior year and they finish that in senior year. And they do need to have a successful completion of chemistry or IB chemistry to go into IB Biology. IB Biology, again, a college level feel in terms of material that they get into some biochemistry, some really interesting labs and discussions. So IB Biology tends to be a a nice fun one for students. But biology is also great. They get into some really cool labs as well. So biology is their science for junior year. I have chemistry on there because we have some students that maybe just coming from other schools, their science was flipped. So I want to make sure they're not feeling forgotten about and that we have that there for them. And again, the science requirement is the 1 year of biology, which they'll be doing next year. Their year of chemistry, which most are doing this year. And then the 1 year of any science, which often comes from their 9th grade science. And same thing that students will often get excited that, I don't have to do science senior year. And it's like, well, true, no. But that's where we often recommend students to continue with science, especially physics, if they're thinking of the medical field. We really like them to have physics, and the colleges really like them to have physics, because if they are going to the medical field, they're going to see a lot of biology. So, okay, our elective registration. So this is the back of our registration sheet that the kids will have. And one thing they often look at is they're like, well, do I have to select something from each box from the art tech? Do I have to select something from business and health? How, they often wonder if I have to. And we only put them in boxes to help compartmentalize the courses. So if they're looking for business, boom, there it is. If they're looking for music, it's over here. So not that they have to select something from every box. And again, we just want to remind them that registration sheet, front and back, how it works is, 14 boxes, if that's what you have, front and back, how the study halls work. So that's the big thing that we'll just be explaining to them is, if you pick 12 boxes, you're then having 2 study halls. So that's the big question is, well, how many am I supposed to select? And it comes down to the study hall piece. Oops. Students will often register or want to register for a student aid. They're wondering how they do that. And that's actually a study hall. It starts off as a study hall. And so it's nothing that they can register for right now, but when they come back in the fall and they can see where their study hall is, then they can apply to be a student aid either in the fall or in the springtime and turn their study hall into a student aid, or TA as they call it. They do get an elective credit one time towards graduation. Students can certainly TA again. They kind of like helping a teacher with some of the responsibilities and kind of getting that experience, and they can certainly do that. They just don't get credit again. So instead of sitting in a study hall, maybe as a senior, they want to do a TA again, and they can certainly do that. Students often get super excited about open hours. And honestly, open hours is nothing more than luck of the draw if their study hall falls 1st and 7th hour and have parent guardian permission. Sometimes students will think, well, I have a 4th hour study hall, so that can be an open hour. And it's like, nope, that's actually a study hall. And a lot of times we'll get students saying, well, I want to have a 1st hour. I want to have a 7th hour. Can you adjust my schedule for that? I'm tired in the morning. I have sports in the afternoon. I work, a lot of valid reasons, but unfortunately, we're just not able to adjust schedules for open hours. And a couple of years ago, we kept track of how many juniors and seniors asked for open hours, and it was close to 800, not 800 kids, but perhaps kids asking over and over and over again. So we do get a lot of those requests, and we really try and tell them we cannot adjust your schedule for open hours. The school day is 8:25 to 3:15, and that's what we work with. And in a couple of years, when you go on to bigger and better things, you can make any schedule you want. So, but right now we have to work within the high school parameters of the day. I often like to also give final registration advice. And that often comes through elective registration. So one thing I really try and tell the 10th graders when I have them is, to kind of get away from this underclassmen way of thinking, because as soon as they start talking about classes, they'll turn to their friend and they'll be like, what are we going to take together? What should we take? I didn't hear good things about this teacher. This teacher is really awesome. Well, this sounds really easy. It's really cute how they do turn to each other and do that. And I challenge them to say, okay, you are registering as an upperclassman. So, you know, let's start thinking like an upperclassman and think about, what are you interested in? What do you want to take? What do you want to explore? You read the course description. You just didn't put something down because of the name. And so that's what I really challenge the students of. Let's head into that upperclassman way of thinking and to think about you, of what you want to take. I also like to talk about academic sanity. A lot of times the question is it better to get an A in a regular class or a B, C, or D in an AP or honors class? And that's always a tricky one, because if a student's really interested in it, you know, and maybe it's something they get a C in, but they really like it, is what's the payoff from that standpoint? You know, I would tell students, you know, if you're registering for some AP or IB and it's potentially going to be, you know, where you're getting C, is it that you're not interested in the class? Is it that you're registering for too many, that you haven't built time in to be ready for all that? You know, I would tend to say that if it's getting multiple C's or lower, I would maybe say, okay, what should I maybe scale back to make room? So it's really about registering for classes that your student believes they can be successful in. And then the other tricky part is, well, what does success mean for them? For some students, it's only got to be an A. For other students, they're like, you know what, if I get a C in that, I'm pretty happy, I did well. So it's kind of like, what does success mean to that student? And as we're coming into junior and senior year, it doesn't mean it has to be all these AP or IB courses. It's not about what your friends are registering for, trying to keep up with them or anything like that. It's really about digging deep and kind of saying, what is it that I want to do? I tell my daughter all the time, she's 14, and I tell her, you know, you can have all the ability in the world to do something, but let's look at what else is happening in your life. What else is happening that is going to take time and space and energy, so that we can maintain that balance of making sure everything fits together. I asked the U of M a couple of years ago, like, what would you say, U of M? What would you tell a family? And they said, take the most challenging courses that you can be successful in. And again, how does that student define that success? Because it can be different for them, from this student versus this student. So that's the academic sanity that I'm always trying to be mindful of. And then I also like to tell students, okay, so the last few years, you know, kind of what have you been up to on this left-hand side? And they always get a kick out of that, because they're like, well, what about this? And what about that? I'm like, yep, that's true. That's true. And I said, now from today to graduation, especially as you're coming into junior year, you're going to add this onto this. So you're adding more into your day. And how do you balance all that? How do you make it all work? And so I really want them to think about that, of what's going on in their life, because I am such an advocate of making sure that they're balanced, and picking the classes that, yes, offer challenge and rigor and interest, but they also have to make sure they're balancing their health, their wellness, their sleep, and their me time. I am a huge believer in their me time, of having that balance. And I tell students, okay, you got 24 hours in a day. That's all you got, 24 hours. Tell me how that time is used up. Tell me what's going on in that 24 hours. Because if students are taking a little too much on, the first thing they give up is sleep. That's the first thing. And then it doesn't go well once they start giving up that sleep and that me time. And so that's something I'm just really protective of. So again, they will have until March 3rd to put in their course request. So they'll start it in the next couple weeks, and then the final piece has to be in by March 3rd. And I would love to connect with students. I just wanted to remind them that the next 2 weeks, I am in the English 10 and the English 11 classes, and we are at the middle school doing presentations for the next 2 weeks. So my drop-in times are going to be actually the last week in February if they have questions or want to follow up or want to ask me anything. So that's when I'll be back in my office out of the classes. So I would love to connect with them, and they can stop in, and I'll post this on Schoology so they know where I am and when. I also just want to let families be aware of the post planning after high school. We have an amazing college and career readiness program run by Kara Mueller, and she's got this great website that has some cute little videos and college resources that talk about ACT and career inventories and a job board and planning and just some amazing information. There's also a virtual college fair that's coming up March 19th through NACAC, which stands for National Association of College and Admissions Counseling. They put together amazing virtual fairs that a lot of colleges come to, and the colleges do their little presentations, and then there's some really fun breakout sessions of financial aid and essays. And so I really like those virtual fairs. And then Ms. Mueller also has amazing apprenticeship information regarding, IT and HVAC and youth apprenticeships, just amazing information. So I just wanted to make sure you were all aware of our amazing college and career readiness program that's on the website. Okay. So, and I welcome any questions into the chat, because we're going to take a lot of those questions and again, formulate them on a live document so we can make sure that everybody has access to the questions that are being asked, because they're really good questions. But I would love to open it up to any questions you might have. Feel free to unmute yourself. And also be mindful of time. You are also free to go as well. So thank you for coming. Okay, so I'm just going to look at some of the questions here. Okay, this was about the AHA, the music I played. Okay, there we go. Yes, if students are on an IEP, they will also work with their case manager to make sure they are registering for appropriate classes. And the IEP study skills issue credits. But students on a 504, it's a regular study hall that does not issue credit. Only IEPs do, because it's a study skills class. Yes, PSEO in junior year. We do get students who do PSEO in junior year. We definitely get more in senior year for sure, but we get a nice handful of students in junior year. It's growing so much, which is why Ms. King is now a coordinator of that, because it's just getting bigger and bigger. So there's a question of how do we do this registration if we're going to do PSEO? Great question. What we tell the students is nobody's accepted to PSEO yet. And you won't know if you're accepted to PSEO until probably, gosh, the earliest March. The U of M doesn't even release their decisions until May. So students still need to register as if they're not doing PSEO. And then once they get accepted, then we go and adjust their classes based on what they're going to register for PSEO. So they still need to register. For new incoming students, in terms of to be contacted, our enrollment center, once students go through and families go through the enrollment center, then the enrollment center will notify our office to connect with new families coming into the district to register for the next year. So the first step is going through the enrollment center. Then that kicks over to our administrative assistant, Kim Fisher. And then she sets up the appointments throughout the spring to get you registered for the next year. Let's see. Thank you. Does St. Louis Park offer the SAT? We actually only do the ACT, and we have it where juniors can take it in-house free of charge. And I really like that we do that. And so it's I think this year it's in March for the juniors. And what's interesting, just having seniors last year, and Kelsey, who's on here also, who has seniors this year, just from really what's done for the pandemic, is the number of colleges that are remaining test optional for a number of years down the road. So I think that's an interesting trend. And I'm not a betting woman, but if I was, I would say it's probably going to stay. Some of the colleges are going to stay test optional. I think that's going to be a trend, but that's what I put my money on. Question about electives. In what categories are electives required? It's any class. It could be like, for instance, in the English category, it could be Echo or Echo-On. It could be an extra cinema class. In social studies, it could be that they're taking criminal justice. So it's anything that is extra. So it can come from science, it can come from math, it can come from music. It's all over of where electives can come from. So some PSEO questions. So yes, still register as if you're not doing PSEO, because nobody's accepted yet. So we need you to register. And then once you go through the orientation at the college and pick your classes, then you come back to us with the classes, and then we adjust your schedule. But what can often be helpful is when you're meeting with your college counselor to pick classes, bring in what you registered for next year, and show it to them, because they can say, oh, you were planning to take US history. Let's make sure and get you in a US history, for example. Let's see, also for PSEO, is that better for students staying in Minnesota? So I would say that for PSEO, our Minnesota State colleges and university systems are phenomenal at accepting PSEO credits. Absolutely phenomenal. Once we start getting to the private schools, they can be a little bit pickier in terms of what they bring in for PSEO credits. I've seen schools where they're like, nope, yeah, we want you for 4 years. You're getting our college diploma. We want you for 4 years. I've seen where colleges say, we can take in a couple, but not all. We'll take in this, but not this. So I've seen that with the private schools. With the California systems, with the East Coast schools, with your more tier 1 schools, I've seen them be a little picky in terms of what they also bring in for PSEO credit. So kind of the higher tier you go, I think the more picky they do get, for sure. Let's see. Okay. I don't know if I answered the SAT question. Maybe you could clarify that one in the chat. Wisconsin Madison, they're really good for accepting PSEO. And it also kind of depends on the class. So for instance, for PSEO, I'm just going to pick on English. What we really want to tell students is, okay, if you're going to take your English and you kind of want to make sure it transfers nicely to the college, take traditional English, like Intro to American Lit, British literature, like diversity of literature, college composition, public speaking, like those traditional. When students kind of start getting into young adult literature or creative writing at the college, where it's a little bit more specialized, that's where we see the colleges like a Madison say, no, that's a little too particular with that. So that's where it's helpful to not get too off the beaten path of what an English credit is, to stay very traditional with English. So we really like literature, composition, and public speaking. Those transfer really nicely. So talking about weighted grades, correct, we don't have a weighted grade system. And actually, there's a lot of colleges that will, some of the schools like Wayzata, who's the other one that weights, I can't think of it. I'm blanking, but like Wayzata, for instance, that they have some weighted grades. And what happens is there's so many different grading weighted scales. It could be a 6-point weighting scale, a 10-point weighting scale, a 20-point weighting scale, like, and so when the colleges see these weighting scales come in, they're like 10-point, 20-point, 100-point, 6-point, like what is this? And a lot of times they're going to bring it back to a 4.0 weighting scale just to kind of understand and put it in perspective. And every high school sends with a college application a profile of the high school, so they know what we do, what we don't do. And colleges will absolutely see IB and AP as more challenging, even though it's not weighted, for sure. So we don't have weighted grades. And for that reason, we don't have the class rank either because of that. And I think that's been really helpful for students, honestly. Great questions. And again, I want to be mindful of everybody's time. So you are welcome to go and enjoy the evening, but Kelsey and I will certainly stay on for any questions you have. Please put them in the chat too, because we're going to be using the chat questions to help populate our FAQ. We won't put your name on or anything.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Questions coming up about the required art electives. What counts as art? There was a slide. Was there a slide? Yeah, there was a slide. So art would be like, yes, art tech, but also music, choir, band, orchestra, digital beat making, world drumming, when we had that, theater arts, IB film out of the English. So typically students will grab their art requirements out of the art tech box, especially if they're not in band, choir, or orchestra, correct? The question is if any of the health and phy ed go towards any other requirement. They only meet the health and phy ed. However, if students are taking, like, let's say they took phy ed 1 and now they're going to take an advanced PE, like recreation sports, team sports, that counts as electives. They're doing their health 10 this year, so if they take like healthcare core, that counts as electives.
But it doesn't count as like one of the art electives.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Yep, and feel free to unmute too if you want to ask a question. That's totally fine.
I do have a question since I didn't want to unmute before there's so many people on, but here, I'll say hi.
Hi.
So Corinna is like next year, I'm not worried about next year because there's a Spanish, it's a, she's Spanish 5. She did Spanish 4 IB this year. So Spanish 5 IB next year. But then I noticed that it then goes to Spanish 7 for immersion. Like there's like, what happened to, so what would she do in 6th grade with that? I mean, 12th grade. Would that be a time to go do PSEO then? Is there
Yeah.
not something that is there not an option for that?
Yeah, so that's where working with the Spanish teacher, they might recommend starting one of the immersions possibly. But otherwise, I have seen where students go to the college to continue with Spanish too. So just kind of depending on where they're at and what the teacher thinks would be a next pathway for them. So there's the IB SL year 1 and then the SL year 2. And just kind of depending on how they're progressing, the Spanish teacher might recommend one of the immersion pathways, but I've also seen where students are like, I'll go take something PSEO because the beginning immersion pathways are with, the 9th graders. And especially when they're seniors are like, I don't know.
Okay, that's kind of what I wanted to, think about as we move forward. I
Yeah.
mean, next year, this coming year, it's easy because.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Question, are the various pathways reviewed with the students? Yep, this is essentially the presentation that they're going to see in the next couple weeks. Yep, so I really wanted to make sure that that parents and guardians and families saw the presentation that the kids are going to see. So everybody's on the same page. I know with my 14-year-old, it's very quickly to get off, get not in line sometimes. So yeah.
Could thought of another question, sorry, about science. So Corinna does want to take that 3rd chemistry. Does that happen semester 1 or does it happen semester 2? Okay.
Semester 1. Yep.
So semester 1, she would take biology and chemistry at the same time.
Correct. Yep. Yep.
And then the IB diploma, we were actually looking at that. I'm sorry, I should have it pulled up, but I don't. The confusing thing that I found was it seems like AP US history, like for her plan anyways, she would have like every other IB requirement except the history component seems really confusing because it looks like AP US history doesn't count for it.
Correct. So they would be doing the IB history for the diploma. So
what is that? Is that US history at all? Is that,
Yep. So it's a 2-year program. And the high school used to offer it year 1 and year 2 every year together. But because the numbers have dwindled, now that IB history is going to be in every other year. So the sophomores next year who are doing the diploma are actually going to take year 2 next year because that's the rotation. And then in senior year, they're going to take year 1, which is the US history component. So they do meet sorry, there's a little bell going off in my house. So they do meet their US history requirement through IB history.
Okay, but what happens if she hasn't, she took, what was it, first year civics with the honors option.
Yep.
And then this past year, she did AP European history.
Yep.
So then how would she have to do 2 years or she just has to do 1 year to get that
of the IB history?
Yeah.
Well, if they're a diploma, they're pretty much going to be doing the 2 years of IB history.
Oh, so
Yep.
she's out of luck.
Yeah, I haven't seen a diploma candidate not do IB history for the HL 2-year program.
Okay, because if it's every other year, there's no way that she can do that then.
No, it is because they just flipped of when it's going to be offered. So they'll do year 2 next year and year 1 in senior year because IB history is a 2-year program regardless.
Oh, okay. So it's not like, oh, okay. I thought you meant that they're only offered every other year. In general, they are.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So the year 1 and year 2 are now on rotation.
Okay. But that's what she would have to do if she wants her IB diploma.
Correct. Yep.
It's kind of a bummer because she has everything, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, that's good to know. I'll talk to her about that then.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see. So the elective pathways, that was one of the questions is, are the elective pathways discussed with the students? And that's actually the one of the reasons that the elective fair happened was it last week? Yeah, last week. So all the kind of the elective teachers, if you will, that have all the different electives, that they went around to all the classrooms to talk about their particular electives, because we really wanted to make sure that students heard about the electives. So that was the fun elective fair last week for them. But certainly as we talk about the registration piece, we want to make sure that students know about all the different opportunities that are out there for the different electives. And sometimes students don't know what they don't know, and they're not sure what they're going to be interested in. And so it's a great time to kind of explore of, you know, what is criminal justice? What does that work? What is accounting? Would I like that? So it's also fun to see them kind of explore as well.
Sorry, another question. So just because I'm looking at all these abbreviations, what is SL and HL? I mean, is that standard level, honors level? Is that what that means?
It's higher level and standard
level.
level. Mhm.
Got it. Okay.
Yep.
Another question. I'm full of questions tonight. So when Corinna did civics, she did everything to get the honors option. How does that show up on a transcript? Like, how does that, and how do we know that she did, like, it was put in properly? You know what I mean? How do we
Yeah,
know?
so they should be able to see on their Power School, on their course history, if it says honor civics compared
okay.
to honor civics, or compared to civics in parentheses honors option. So I did see that there was a student that didn't have that, and I went to go talk to Ms. Nelson, and there's a final sheet of who should have that. So if it was missed, we'd look back and go, oh yeah, this person should have it, and we adjust it.
And where do you find that again?
It's in their course history on Power School.
Oh, can we see that as a parent logged in, or they have to go look?
You should be able to. I don't know the parent side as well as the student side.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Thank you. It's in their grade history.
Grade history. There we go. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time tonight. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions, thoughts? Kelsey, I'm going to take the screenshots of the questions. Because I can't figure out how to cut and paste.
Sounds good. I have some over here too. I'll cut and paste them.
Okay. Okay. Well, if there's no other questions, I'm gonna go ahead and end the meeting. Have a great night. Take care. Thank you.